name is Zulaika. I'm from this initiative called MINDA. We're a Malaysian youth mental health initiative. Jadi, how we operate is that we're just a group of youth who are passionate about mental health. So we advocate for mental health, and we try to educate people about mental health and things like that. According to the statistics, there's a survey that was done. It's called the National Health and Mobility Survey. It was done by the Ministry of Health in 2015. So according to that survey, they found that 1 in 3 Malaysian adults and 1 in 5 children in Malaysia are suffering from a mental health condition. So the way that the survey works is that there's this questionnaire which taps into the psychological distress of Malaysian people. So that's how the survey came about and the statistics come about. I think it's quite a reliable thing to look at lah. Well, according to what I know, Malaysia is quite behind compared to especially Singapore and the Philippines and even Indonesia, whereby we have only 1 psychiatrist and 1 psychologist for every 100,000 people in Malaysia. So it's quite hard for Malaysians to get treatment from those professionals because there aren't many. In terms of mental illness, of course, the most common one is depression. Depression is sort of known as the common flu of mental illness. So that is the most common mental illness. And there might be some anxiety as well, but that's like the most prominent one lah. But in order for us to get like diagnosed or treatment, we have to go to a clinic first, a clinic awam or anything like clinic swasta or anything like that. So some of the main signs of you having a mental health condition is that maybe you have trouble sleeping, or there's a change in your appetite or the way you eat. You might feel very sad, very empty for a very long period of time. You might have very severe mood swings. You might even hear voices. You have irrational thoughts of suicide and things like that. So those are some of the signs that you have to look out for before you seek help. Well, there is a law that gives the rights to the client, confidentiality rights. So whatever interaction you have with a professional, it won't be like dia tak akan disebarkan to like people outside of the session that you have lah. But that depends. If you are a danger to yourself or other people, then they must break that confidentiality. If you are under 18, then you have to have permission from your parents, except if they are suspected to abuse you or they're not available, they're not there for you. Yeah, because when you go to a clinic, of course you have to register your name, you have to give them your IC and all that. So I wouldn't say that you cannot like reveal your name lah. It really depends on who you talk to lah. Certain people are okay with it, but I would say that a lot of people in Malaysia still have that perception that people who have mental illness are gila or tak betul, there's something wrong with them, they may like hurt you and things like that. So in terms of like will you be chastised, there is a high chance of that, but nowadays I feel that Malaysian people are more open to talk about mental health and mental illness and are more accepting of it. The cost, well, if we're talking about like klinik kerajaan and government hospitals, then it's very, very affordable. It's very cheap. It's only 1 ringgit for you to go and see a doctor. There'll be for kerajaan or public healthcare, there are a few steps that you have to go through. That you go to klinik kesihatan and the nurse will take your blood pressure, give you a survey, you have to fill in about your mental health. Then you have to see a doctor, and afterwards maybe the doctor refers you to a psychiatrist or gives you a referral letter for you to go to a hospital. So it's of course very affordable, but then there's like a few steps that you have to go through. In terms of like private healthcare, it's very easy for you to get an appointment. You don't have to wait for so long. You can just go and see a psychiatrist at their own private clinic and then get diagnosed there, or medication or therapy or whatever you may need. But the cost is of course, it tends to be very expensive. Usually it's like 50 ringgit at least for consultation, and if you need medication then it usually costs at least 100 ringgit. So macam beratus-ratus juga lah you have to pay for private healthcare. It depends on what you have. So usually depression is something that anyone can experience. So it's also very treatable, whereby you can have like treatment for around 3 months and you'll be okay, I guess, functioning back to normal. But if we're talking about other mental illnesses such as schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, any personality disorders, it's quite hard for you to get better in a very short time. So it takes months and months, it might take years, but I wouldn't put a number on it, but it's definitely worth getting the help rather than not and having the condition be much worse. Mental illness is definitely hereditary in some sense. It's hereditary in terms of genetically and also psychologically and socially. There are studies that find that some genomes are related to having mental illness. Kalau we talk about psychological and social point of view, then we might learn ineffective coping skills or negative ways of thinking from our parents. So that's how you may have like a higher risk of developing a mental illness because of the way you develop your thinking. Yes, it's very treatable. It's of course, like I said, it's definitely better for you to seek help rather than not. It's definitely worth it. It's treatable in a sense that if you have a severe mental illness, then you can manage it more appropriately, more effectively, rather than not having treatment. You'll be more stable, you'll be able to live your life more normally, function day to day. Some illnesses are treatable and you may not experience it again, such as depression. But generally I would say that yeah, mental illness is very much treatable. Mental illness has a few aspects, which are biological, psychological, social, and spiritual. So memang spirituality tu memang mainkan peranan lah to how you handle mental illness, but it's not the only thing that you should look out for, that you should take care of. Maybe macam if you do prayers or anything like that, maybe boleh bantu lah with your condition. But it's not the only thing, and you have to consider other aspects as well. If you have a severe mental illness that is not treated, especially if it's not treated, then you have a risk of harming yourselves, especially harming yourselves rather than others. You might engage in like substance abuse, such as doing drugs, alcohol. You may cut yourself, you may attempt suicide. So it's very much a danger to yourself, and you may also harm others. So there are symptoms whereby you may become more impulsive than usual. So you might drive recklessly. So that might affect others, like you get into an accident, you crash into someone or something like that. So memang ada risiko tinggi lah kalau like harm yourself and others. Of course, it's better for you to interact with them, or else the problem will never be solved. It's like it's like sweeping things under the rug, you know. So it's better to interact with them. If you have a friend who seems like down for a long period of time, then you may ask them how they're doing, if there's a problem. If you actually know someone who has a mental illness and their condition is very severe, they might harm themselves and stuff like that. It's best for you to reach out to them, tell them that you're there. If things get worse, you may have to take them to the emergency ward. In some cases, there are you need to like call police to take them to the psychiatric ward and stuff like that. So it really depends on the situation, but it's always best to talk to them and reach out to them rather than like ignore them totally, because they're a harm to themselves and they may be a harm to others as well. There's this really old clinic that I know that was established in the 70s, and it says Klinik Sakit Jiwa. So it may be an okay translation. Kalau mental illness, maybe like penyakit mental is more accurate, or masalah kesihatan mental or penyakit minda. There are other ways of describing it as well. I wouldn't say that the people who go through these experiences or illnesses are underachievers or making excuses or just lazy and things like that. They just cope with things very differently. They may develop very ineffective ways of coping, irrational thoughts, or extreme anxiety. So that sort of thing inhibits them from living normally and coping with things in general. So they're definitely not they're not lazy or weak or underachieving. They just deal with things differently.
Zulaika, Peminda kami, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.